Thank you, Mr. President. And yes, it was a successful poker night, but Vivian should not participate anymore because she had me time after time after time. But having said that, we had a lot of fun. With that, I'd like to go to share my screen with you for the presentation today, and we will start right here. So we are going to be speaking about two or three, maybe four subjects. As usual, we'll be very, very quick because it's important for you to get a ton of information, a gigabyte of information in a nanosecond. So that's how these presentations are put together. First, we are going to be talking about the Consumer Sentiment Index from University of Michigan. We will tell you how this thing is put together. In fact, you just heard yesterday that there was a 3-month increase in the Conference Board Consumer Index, and that is different from this. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Second, we are going to be talking about the very important business formation and what is happening in business formation in the state of California. We may have some stuff that people may not like and may want to leave our state, but this certainly is not one of them. Third, we will be talking about the allowable rents in the city of Glendale. This will be a two-part presentation. The first part would have to do with duplexes and single-family homes, and it's important that we all pay attention to this because I've been getting a lot of members, well, actually 3 or 4 members that have called me, and there was a sense of confusion about it. Hopefully, today's presentation will make it easier to decipher what is going on with the tenant protection ordinances in City of Glendale. Then we are going to be talking really briefly touching on do not call, do not fax, do not email lists, because it has hefty fines for the people that would violate it. Now, before doing anything, when it comes to this topic, do have a conversation with your broker. They may already have a policy at hand, which is the key thing. So I'll be touching on it very briefly. And of course, last but not least, we will finish our presentation on a high note on the relevance of Realtor in the past, now, and what will happen in the future. So let's start with the Consumer Sentiment Index. This is put together by University of Michigan, and it's a 5 or 6 decade long process that they've gone through. And as you can see, there is an uptick in it. The index has gone up in the past month and a half in August, and that's a good news. Now, we've always told you that the economy is the tale of two cities when it comes to economy in the United States. You have very strong employment numbers, and yet you have 2 quarters of negative GDP, but we'll cover that and we have covered it in the past. So this is what is happening to the index today. So what goes into the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index? For years and years, there have been 5 questions, and these are the same 5 questions that appear on the surveys. Number 1, compared to a year ago, financially, are you better, worse, or the same? Question number 2, a year from now, do you think you'll be better, worse, or same? Question number 3, in a year, will U.S. business conditions be good, bad, or other? And number 4, in the next 5 years, do you think the U.S. will see continuous good times, unemployment, or depression? And the 5th and the final one, when it comes to major household appliances, is buying now a good time, good thing, or a bad thing? So you can see that a sophisticated survey like this has depended on these 5 questions for the past 5 or 6 decades. This is why they have consistency. This is precisely why the Federal Reserve Board pays a lot of attention to it. And this sentiment index goes with the GDP numbers as we speak. Let's talk a little bit about business formations. There is a website, it's called luca.com. You may want to jot that down. It has got some pretty amazing information about entrepreneurship and what have you. According to luca.com, the business formations, the number one state in business formations is state of California. And of course, they measure this and come up with these numbers with inputting median household income, cost of living, survival rate, annual payroll, businesses, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So California, with all of its shortcomings, is still the number one preferred destination for entrepreneurs. Now, when you consider that we have in the state of California a $3.5 trillion economy. By the way, if it were a nation, that would have been the fifth or sixth largest nation in as far as economy is concerned in the world. Then this data point becomes very, very important. We hear, for example, and I've given presentations on it, that 300,000 people have left California because of housing. Yet, when you see a data point like this, it puts it in perspective for you as realtors when and if you have a conversation with your clients about this, housing, and other real estate related issues. Now, I want to take a moment and talk about allowable rent increases in Glendale. This is part one. We are only going to be speaking about single-family homes and duplexes. In the next presentation, I'll go over everything else other than single-family and duplexes. But before we do that, just to put everything in perspective, I want to give you a refresher on Costa-Hawkins, which GAOR sponsored. We realtors had it passed back in 1995. And under Costa-Hawkins, three important salient principles exist today. Number one, Costa-Hawkins, according to this housing act, it bars rent control on single-family homes and condos. Number two, buildings constructed after 1995, if you are in a rent control jurisdiction, you cannot put rent control on those buildings. And number three, it prohibits vacancy control. In other words, when a house or a condo or a unit vacates, then the housing provider can increase the rent, bring the rent up to the market. With that, in City of Glendale, we have a rent cap of 7%. President Toro, myself, and a bunch of people in 2018, 2019, we advocated about the 7% versus the 3%. And the swing vote at the time was Councilmember Agajanian, and we were very, very fortunate to have him convinced that this is the right way to go about it. Now, if you want to increase the rent more than 7%, then you have to pay a relocation fee. So now it becomes an economic decision as opposed to a force down the throat type of a situation. If you are a single family and or a duplex owner, or your client is a single family or duplex owner, there are exemptions. So you can increase the rent for a single family or a duplex or a condo 10% or even more, right? But keep in mind, 1482, state of California doesn't allow you to go more than 10%. You have no relocation fee that is designed for single family condo and or a duplex. Those are the exemptions. So if today I want to increase the rent that I charge on my house, I can charge 10%. If I want to go over 10%, by the way, according to HUD, I have to give a 90-day notice. However, if it's below 10%, then all that is required is 30-day notice. So for all practical purposes, there is no rent control on single-family homes and or condominiums in the city of Glendale. The next part we will talk about, which will be next week or the week after, about the rest of the stuff, the really fun stuff. I hope this part has given you some clarity on single-family homes and duplexes. Do not call, do not fax, do not email laws. I will be putting this link in the chat for you. CAR has got a quick guide on it, and under risk management, of course, do speak to your broker about this thing. Your broker may already have a policy at hand, and do follow that policy because, look, this thing has got some hefty fines. I read upwards of $100,000 for the first time offense, right? And so we have to be very careful on this thing. All right, and so this is the quick guide that will give you some information on it. But again, do speak to your broker because they already may have a policy in place. By the way, if there is no policy, the risk management end of it, the one that I will be putting the link in the chat, will have a sample policy for you to be able to copy and use. Next, let's talk about Realtor, our relevance. We keep telling you that we, your executive team, your CEO, your board of directors, by extension, CAR, the most important thing that they want to do is to keep you in the center of the transaction. Now, we can't talk about the relevance of a realtor or yourselves without making a mention of this effort of wanting to pluck you out from the middle of the transaction. And this has been a hot topic since 1997, and that's called disintermediation. So some background. In 1997, NAR had 716,000 members. By contrast, today, we are at 1,563,000 strong, twice as much, as many members as we did in 1997. There is one realtor, folks, for every 165 adult Americans. By contrast, one physician for every 262 adults, and one attorney for 250 adults, right? So there are plenty of realtors, and we do have a clout nationally when it comes to stuff that involves housing and organized real estate. NAR states that the average homeowner today stays in their home approximately 13 years. This causes the homeowner to get to know a few realtors, right? And this makes transformative change in our business a very difficult proposition. Now, I know that the net result because of that is that the practice has pretty much stayed the same since 1987. This is according to 1,000 watts. And by the way, that's another website that you want to check. It's a pretty cool website and a platform that serves agents and realtors. So billions of dollars is being spent in the tech arena to create platforms to, again, take you out of the equation, right? And to be able to profit from you not being there. However, despite or in spite of all of this money that has been spent, again, everything is pretty much the same way, and business is conducted the same way. According to Real Trends, 20 years ago, 85% or 81% of the buyers and sellers used a realtor. This is 2 decades ago. 80% plus were using a realtor. Today, 92% use a realtor. Even in the millennial segment of the population, 92% of the millennials, which are who are very tech savvy, still use a realtor. So you can see that technology has not been successful in replacing or disintermediating you, your job, and your future. Tech is pervasive, there is no questions about it. But you look at the stock prices of Zillow's, Open Doors, and so forth, you will see that they are not anything that you can write home about. They've been continually dropping. Why is that? Well, because again, 90% of the people who prefer to use realtors. It's as simple as that. In fact, firms like Zillow have not been able to disintermediate us and or open door. Zillow's revenue, 75% of Zillow's revenue comes from realtors. And it's important for you to know that. Now, recently, you may have read about this, Open Door paid $62 million in FTC claims, Federal Trade Commission. Why? Because it misled sellers. According to FTC, Open Door costs were typically higher than what a normal consumer would pay for a real estate agent. Haven't we been saying this time after time, year after year, that we save the consumer money? And this is not from me. This is not from GAOR. This is from FTC's direct quote. So this idea of disruption, again, interesting quote from 1000 Watts, that states, it is like an engine of gears without teeth. There's a lot of spinning going on, but very little forward drive. And I like this quote. Now, we know that we were relevant in the past. We are relevant today, and to a high degree we are. So what does the future hold? Well, if you ask me, the smart money would be betting on the realtor. With that, Mr. President, thank you. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Greg. Your information is always so good. I think I could be wrong because I often am, but I believe California has probably close to 10% of all the realtors in the United States, doesn't it? That's
California today, right? We are close to about 200,000 realtors.
Wow. So actually more than 10%. The 1000 Watt, is it 1000watt.com? Is that
yes.
His website? Okay.
Yes.
Because somebody asked. All right.
No, it's 1000watt.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, as always. Great information. We look forward to your next presentation.